So when you got to the scene, having no additional information, seeing what you saw, that's what was going through your mind, is that right?
Yeah, yes.
So when you got to the scene, what did you do next?
Parked the ambulance near the patient and got out. I walked to the back of the ambulance and my partner walked over to check on the patient.
And what did you see when you got out of the ambulance in terms of the patient's condition at that point?
I was standing a little ways away, so I couldn't get my partner would have a more accurate description of his condition at that point, but from what I could see where I was at, I didn't see any breathing or movement or anything like that.
Did he appear to be unresponsive to you at that point in time?
From what I could tell, just standing from a distance, yes.
And was he in handcuffs?
Yes.
And we're describing the patient here. Was that patient later identified as George Floyd?
Yes.
So when you got out, your partner first approached, is that right? What were you doing at that initial point in time when you first got there?
As he went over to check on the patient, I was watching him to kind of get a cue on what we were going to do next, because we're still determining what the patient's condition was. So I was kind of waiting for him to go check on the patient and then know what to do next.
And at that point in time, when you were standing outside and your partner was approaching the patient, did you see a struggle of any kind going on, any movement, anything like that?
No.
Okay. So after your partner first approached, did you see what he was doing?
Yeah, he checked a pulse on his neck, a carotid pulse, and also looked like he checked the patient's pupils.
And did you discuss with your partner at that point next steps?
Yeah, he walked back towards me and I asked, is he in cardiac arrest? And he said, I think so.
So, you use the word cardiac arrest. What does that mean?
It's the term we're going to use for anybody that's not responsive, not breathing, and doesn't have a pulse currently.
Okay. So, essentially, does that mean that someone's heart is stopped?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there multiple things that can cause someone's heart to stop?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So when you say cardiac arrest, you're dealing with a patient whose heart is stopped. Is that an emergency?
Yes.
Okay. So what did you guys, knowing that you had an individual, George Floyd, in cardiac arrest, what did you decide to do?
My partner said, let's just get him in the truck. So I unloaded our stretcher to bring to the patient to place him in the ambulance.
And what was the reason for getting him into the truck?
Yeah. All of our equipment at that point was in the truck for resuscitating the patient. And we also didn't have Minneapolis Fire there yet, which they work with us on critical patients like that and help us a lot. So kind of for resource management, we needed to get in the truck. And then on top of that, there was also a crowd of people that appeared very upset on the sidewalk, and there was some yelling and stuff. And we, in my mind at least, we also want to get away from that, because running a cardiac arrest, it takes a lot of mental power and focus, and it can be taxing on our abilities, so we want to do that in the optimum environment we can. And since the ambulance is right there, we want to be in that controlled space to start resuscitation.
And was part of your reason to move, as you described, to give the best care you could so that you could be focused and away from whatever distractions were happening outside?
Yeah.
And you described hearing people, yelling or loud voices, but was there a physical fight or anything like that happening while you were there?
Not that I saw, no.
Okay. But you decided it would be best for the patient to move to a controlled setting and do your work on the ambulance, is that right?
Yeah, and all of our equipment was there, yeah.
And when you also mentioned fire, tell me why it's important to have fire assist in a situation like this.
There's just a lot of different skills we're going to be doing on a patient to try to resuscitate them, and we work closely with Minneapolis Fire. They're all EMTs, and they work with us on resuscitating a patient, doing things like breathing for them with like a BVM to help the patient breathe or do chest compressions, stuff like that.
Okay, so I'm going to break down some of the things you said. You used the term BVM.
Sorry, yeah, it's a thing you squeeze to breathe for your patient, essentially.
To assist with if someone's not breathing, is that a part of the process to try to resuscitate
Yes.
the respiration?
Yes.
All right, and we're using the word fire. I assume we're talking about the Minneapolis Fire Department, is that
Yes.
right? And in a lot of people's minds, the fire department fights fires, but you're describing they're also EMTs.
Yeah.
So is it typical for them to assist you with a patient who's in extreme distress or a cardiac arrest or something like that?
Yes, it is.
And you said that there's a lot of work to do. Maybe you could just explain a little bit for the jury why it takes so many people. What's the process that you typically go through when you're trying to resuscitate a patient in that state?
We're doing things like chest compressions to hopefully circulate blood through their body, and you also need to control their airways. So there's some sort of airway has to be placed, and we have to breathe for them. We need to gain vascular access to like an IV or something, so we can give medications to try to resuscitate them, as well as our cardiac monitor, which is going to be monitoring a couple different things, but mainly their heart rhythm.
And to do all of those things at the same time, I assume you would need more than one person at least.
Yeah, it's just the more help you have, you can get it done quicker, and kind of running. Once you have everything established, it can run much smoother, but that initial